How's it going, guys, and welcome back to the channel where today, in celebration of The Mandalorian Season 2 coming to an end, and man, what an ending it was, I've decided to rank together the Star Wars films and shows from worst to best in one big ranking. Now, I did rank the Star Wars films on this channel exactly 1 year ago, and it went over really well, apart from the several death threats, but you know, sort of comes with the territory. But I did actually plan to have this ranking up on my Star Wars channel as opposed to this Star Wars gaming channel, but that channel is still new, so I thought I'd just put it up here and maybe bring some of you guys over to the new channel from this video. So be sure to check out my Star Wars film and TV show channel. A banner will pop out in the top right corner of the video. All future film and show related Star Wars content will be over there, whilst this channel stays strictly Star Wars gaming. But anyway, I'm waffling. I think a lot has changed for me since I last ranked Star Wars films. So the way I'm going to do this ranking, I'm of course going to include all Star Wars films, but I'm only going to include the main shows, you know, like The Mandalorian, Rebels, Clone Wars, you get it. Just to see where they sort of stack up to the films in one big ranking. And lastly, I know I'm probably trying to avoid the inevitable here, but just be respectful of other people's opinions in the comments below. I can take the abuse. If you don't like my opinions, I don't care. Go nuts at me, I can take it. But some people in the comments might not be able to. So just be respectful, be a decent human being in the comments when others voice their opinions. That's all I'm asking. And remember, these rankings, they're just my opinion. Who the hell cares what I think? But anyway, let's dive on into these rankings. So coming in at last place at number 15 is the Clone Wars movie. Now, I'll get through this one quickly. I kind of have a soft spot for the Clone Wars movie, even though it's in last place, considering how great the show became after it. It's almost like this kind of had to suck for the show to be so good. But it's clear when you go back and you watch this movie that the animation style was just not there. Ahsoka was just annoying, and considering I saw the show before I saw this, looking back on it, it's kind of bad, but I don't hate it at the same time. It's really, really strange. But what is clear is that I think it's easily the worst Star Wars movie, and a lot of people actually forget that it is a movie, so it's an easy last place for me. But on to number 14 now is the first proper Star Wars movie, that being Solo: A Star Wars Story. Now, do I think this movie is bad? No, it's not. The acting is good, the action is good, the special effects are great, the story is okay, but Solo for me, it just never justified its own existence. That's its problem. It's a fun Star Wars action movie, but it's definitely a Star Wars movie that I can live without. Alden Ehrenreich done a great job of a young Han Solo, and Donald Glover was actually perfect as a young Lando, but I found the villain Dryden Voss, played by Paul Bettany, to just be very disposable. L3 was just super annoying to me and was just like a budget K2SO from Rogue One, and the Maul cameo at the end was just utter fan service, but you know, it was still cool. And stuff like learning how Han got his name was just something that I just don't think we needed, but the Kessel Run sequence was entertaining and the movie does have some funny moments. Ron Howard just done what he could with this film. He came in and he picked up the pieces of a troubled production and gave us a fun, disposable Star Wars action movie. But coming in at number 13 is Star Wars Rebels. Now, a year ago, I might have put this a little bit lower, but recently, I've started to like this show a little bit more. I've never been a big fan of the art style of this show. Characters like Darth Maul, Ahsoka, Vader, you know, characters we've seen before, they just looked really off to me. Maybe I was just used to the art style of the Clone Wars, I don't know. But when I gave this show a second chance, it didn't let me down. There for me are a lot of episodes that are very disposable and definitely filler, but then you get episodes like Twilight of the Apprentice that give you some top tier Star Wars. It just makes up for it. I still think the fight scene between Ahsoka and Vader is one of the best fight scenes in Star Wars history, and also seeing characters like Maul and his story getting its final conclusion, like that sort of stuff's great. Seeing Grand Admiral Thrawn as well, like I loved that sort of stuff. Kanan is for me one of the better Star Wars characters. Ezra didn't quite win me over like Kanan did, but you know, it is what it is. I found in the later half of the show, it kind of started to lose me again, but you know, I take what I can from Rebels. I love some of it, but a lot of it just didn't really land with me. And next up at number 12 is Attack of the Clones. Now, Attack of the Clones probably has some of the worst dialogue in the franchise, but it has some great moments too. you'll find that I'm that kind of Star Wars fan that puts aside what he doesn't like and just focuses on what he does like. Like, that's me. That's why I enjoy Star Wars so much, because Star Wars is flawed, but I see past it. I don't get hung up on things I don't like. That's probably something worth keeping in mind as we go throughout this video as well. Anyway, Attack of the Clones is just a good example of that. The dialogue is super cheesy, the acting at times is very shaky, the reliance on CGI just goes way too far, but the world building, the character work, and the plot, for the most part, just works. And of course, they also toned down the Jar Jar goofiness here. Anakin is super whiny in this film, but you know what? So was Luke in A New Hope, and when you think about it, if you were in Anakin's position, you'd probably be a bit whiny too. He does draw the short end of the stick in this movie. But I still think the death of Shmi Skywalker and Anakin taking his anger out on the Tusken Raiders is one of the best scenes of the franchise. Like, that scene alone elevates this movie for me. Of course, Sir Christopher Lee is amazing as Count Dooku, and Ewan McGregor really comes into his own with Obi-Wan here. This film isn't perfect, but it does begin the Clone Wars well enough and kickstarts events that lead to Anakin's downfall. It just did what it had to do, but it just hit a few speed bumps along the way. And moving on to number 11, and we have the Phantom Menace. Now, there is one reason that the Phantom Menace is above Attack of the Clones, and it's this guy right here. Darth Maul is so good in this movie. I just wish that he got more to do. But when we think the Phantom Menace, we think the final lightsaber fight between Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon. One of the best of the franchise, maybe even the best. The pod racing scene as well is also a huge bright spot in this movie, but much like Attack of the Clones, the dialogue is very cheesy in some places. The acting at times is a little on the meme side, but I loved Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn in this film, but I think people just sort of got lost in the politics of this film, and I don't blame them. Like, the first paragraph of the opening crawl is, "Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute." It's like, what? This is the origin story of cinema's most iconic villain. Like, what are we doing here? But once you get past that and the goofy elements of the film, the Darth Maul fight, the world building of the era, the idea of this Sith Lord pulling the strings behind the scenes, I love all of that. But coming in at number 10 is The Rise of Skywalker. Now, this has been one of the biggest movers for me since I ranked Star Wars films 1 year ago. I think I had The Rise of Skywalker at like number 4 or something. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoy a lot of what we get in this film. I loved the Rey and Kylo Ren dynamic once again. It's the strongest part of the entire trilogy. The dyad and the Force idea between the two of them, it's great. It's a fresh idea that we hadn't seen before, which allowed for some truly unique scenes continued on from The Last Jedi. There's also the banter between our band of heroes. I thought it was fun. The chemistry between the actors was good. But look, I love me some Papa Palpatine, but I hate why they brought him back into this movie. The Rise of Skywalker is Disney buckling under the pressure that The Last Jedi put on them. They tried to do something different with The Last Jedi, and I respect that, but instead of continuing on with that, they played it safe and they tried to bring back familiar faces in Palpatine to maximize profits. That I don't like. That's my biggest problem with this movie, how it pandered to the hate and relied on fan service so heavily. The Rey reveal as a Palpatine, that I did like because she had a similar lightsaber form in The Force Awakens to Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith, so it made sense and had been theorized on for a while by heaps of people, but I hate that they went and dropped the name and gave her Rey Skywalker. Like, I would have much rathered her just say, I'm Rey, or embrace her true identity and say her actual name. But one of the major saving graces of this film for me is Kylo Ren. More specifically, the scene between Kylo and Han on the Death Star ruins shortly after Leia's death. This is one of the best scenes in the saga for me. Kylo calling Han Dad and then Han saying I know, harkening back to what he said in Empire Strikes Back when Leia told him she loves him. That was perfect. It was so well done. And it sort of mirrored their final meeting in The Force Awakens when Han died, just with a totally different outcome this time. Instead, it ended in Kylo's redemption, or Ben's redemption. So The Rise of Skywalker for me is a mixed bag. It's messy, it pandered to the hate, but there are some great things there. Kylo's turn to the light was perfect, and the Kylo and Rey dyad idea was, for me, the best idea that this trilogy came up with. And coming in at number 9 is A New Hope. Now look, I love A New Hope. Don't be fooled by the low ranking. I love everything from here on out. Like for me, there is just not really anything wrong with this film. It's the classic example of the first in a franchise just being a perfect basis that just does nothing wrong. It's just the things that came after this film just went past it, which is a good thing. That's how it should be. A New Hope is always going to be a special film for Star Wars fans. It's the one that kickstarted everything, and watching it again over 40 years later, it's obviously aged in some areas, but that's part of the charm that the movie holds. There is that part of me that wished that the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan was just a little bit better. It's obviously not aged well. Now, Luke for me was very whiny in A New Hope, and even Mark Hamill himself has poked fun at himself for Luke being so whiny. You know, it was just Mark Hamill being Mark Hamill. He's very self-aware. But you know, all of our characters, they come together in this film. Our main three, Luke, Han, and Leia, three totally different characters that just ended up being arguably the most iconic ensemble in film history. This is where it all starts. You can't watch this film and not enjoy yourself. But moving on, and coming in at number 8 is Return of the Jedi. Now, it nudges out A New Hope because I think Return of the Jedi just has higher highs, but it definitely has lower lows. The Ewoks for me, I've never been a fan at all. I don't know why, I can't tell you. I feel like if Ewoks were an integral part of bringing down the Empire in a film that was released today, it would get torn apart. But you know, that's just me. I don't know. Having said that though, I loved Han's rescue in Jabba's palace. Seeing Luke force choke those 2 Gamorrean guards is kind of dark looking back at it, and I really like it. Of course, the Sarlacc pit sequence is great, but for me, the moments that keep a film I'd otherwise be very critical on are the moments between Luke, Vader, and Palpatine. Everything in terms of those 3 was so perfect in this film. Seeing Luke and Vader have a conversation on an equal level is something simple, but so effective. Luke trying to bring Vader to the light and Vader saying, "It's too late for me." I don't know why, but that really always hit me. Also, the reveal of Luke and Leia being brother and sister kind of raises the incest moment from Empire, but it obviously is a vital part of the story, those two being related. But the epic climax of this film is awesome. Palpatine trying to turn Luke and Luke coming close but resisting and then besting his father. It's still to this day, nearly 40 years later, so powerful. And then you of course have Vader's redemption saving Luke. It was just a perfect ending to cinema's most iconic villain. They did recycle the Death Star plot, just building another Death Star, but you know, that's neither here nor there. You can complain about it, you can not care, doesn't really matter. Either way, Return of the Jedi is a great time. But next up at number 7 is Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. Now this is the first spin-off film from the Disney era. This for a lot of people is actually the best Disney Star Wars film, and you know, I think that's fair. Rogue One for me went from a good Star Wars film to a great Star Wars film in recent time. This film covers the plot hole from A New Hope with the Death Star just having an absurd weakness, and it completely justifies it, with revealing that the flaw within the Death Star was actually planted there by Galen Erso, an Imperial engineer who reluctantly worked for the Empire. Rogue One for me just works at telling a story meant for one film and one film only. Obviously, the entire cast basically die. Disney were not afraid to kill off the entire cast, and I actually really respect that. Rogue One captured a lot of the magic from the original trilogy when it comes to the Empire and them feeling like a threat. The resurrection of Peter Cushing as Tarkin was done tastefully, and I loved it. It definitely added to the film. Ben Mendelsohn's director Orson Krennic is also one of my favorite new characters of recent time. He was a great antagonist, and it was established in the film's opening scene that he was going to be compelling. And Jyn Erso was a likable protagonist as well. And of course, a moment for K2SO. Just one of the best droids ever. But of course, we can't talk about Rogue One without talking about that final scene with Vader. Vader going nuts, killing rebels left and right with updated effects and choreography. It's one of the best scenes we have ever seen in Star Wars. Rogue One has really grown on me over time. There was just a time where there was no way where I would have put it in front of A New Hope or Return of the Jedi, but like I said, it's grown on me beyond belief. I really, really like Rogue One. But next up at number 6 is The Last Jedi. Now, this is where probably 98% of the death threats I'll get from this video are going to come from, but oh well. The Last Jedi is arguably the most divisive film ever made. Some people love it, some people hate it, and will literally threaten you with violence if you say you like it. It's mental how different opinions are when it comes to this film. And just how people throw their morals out the window when it comes to discussing it. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. Now, the biggest complaint with The Force Awakens was it played it safe. It didn't try anything new. So Rian Johnson took the helm of The Last Jedi and said, okay, you want new? I'll give you new. And some of it worked. Some of it didn't, but I just have so much respect for The Last Jedi because of how ambitious it was to go in a unique direction. It's easily the most ballsy Star Wars film that's ever been made. Now, my major flaw with this film, because it's not perfect and I'm not going to act like it is Rose Tico and the Canto Bight side quest and what ensues from that. I hate it. I always have. However though, this is an unpopular opinion, but I love what was done with Luke in this film. It goes to show that no matter who you are vulnerable to a moment of weakness. And no matter who you can make mistakes. But more importantly, no matter who you can rectify those mistakes. That is Luke's arc, and I dig it. I'd much rather have seen something deeper thematic-wise like that than see Luke just stroll up and say, I'm Luke Skywalker and throw AT-ATs around because I'm Luke Skywalker because I'm powerful. They really sent Luke's character backwards to catapult him forwards in The Last Jedi, and I love that. And also, I've got to say, the Rey and Kylo Ren dynamic was once again the shining light. Every moment these two are on screen together, it's interesting. And the plot twist with Kylo killing Snoke and teaming up with Rey, that's the sort of twist and surprise you want when you watch a movie. You don't go to see a movie to know what you're going to see. You go to be surprised with a new experience. The scene where Kylo kills Snoke, my jaw was dropped on the floor in the cinemas, and it still is to this day. I love it. Now, I see people criticize the choreography in the Praetorian Guard fight sequence. They slow it down and they point out the flaws. But newsflash, if you slow down any fight sequence in film, you're gonna find flaws. There's a reason we don't watch things in slow motion. So don't slow a film down to try and complain about it. That's my 2 cents on that. But what I think everyone can agree on is that The Last Jedi is visually probably the best Star Wars film that has ever been made. Say what you want about the story and the characters and the choices, but this is something that objectively is incredible. The Last Jedi is a visual masterpiece. No Star Wars film leaves me as flawed when it comes to what it was able to achieve visually than this film. If you can't admit that this film is visually absolutely incredible, then you are literally blinded by hatred. Because regardless on whether or not you like the story or the characters, you got to admit this film looked damn good. Now, next up, we have The Force Awakens at number 5. Now, The Force Awakens, when it came out, pretty much everyone loved it. I think that's fair. The only flaw people really came up with was that it was similar to A New Hope, which it is. I'm never going to argue that. But the way J.J. Abrams reintroduced Star Wars with this film was something to be commended. Whether you like or dislike what came after The Force Awakens, it's fair to say that this film is just across the board solid. It introduces and reintroduces new and old characters. It's visually incredible, the story is safe, but it's still easy to watch. I still think Finn's arc in this film is one of the best. It's something we'd never seen before. A defected stormtrooper that joins the good guys. I liked that. Even though his motivations were to get away from the war, then help save Rey once she was captured. I really liked Finn in The Force Awakens. Of course, Rey's introduction as the mysterious Force-sensitive character that has characters like Kylo and Snoke just absolutely perplexed on what's going on with her. It's an intriguing setup. And I still think Han Solo's send-off was handled so well, and for me is the best scene of the film and one of the best in the saga. So well acted by Harrison Ford and Adam Driver. I think Kylo was handled so well in this film and was easily the best character in the entire sequel trilogy. Putting him in Vader's shadow and making him live up to the legacy of his grandfather was just a perfect cornerstone for his character. The Force Awakens for me just didn't really put a foot wrong, and as time has gone by over the past 5 years, I've started to enjoy it more and more. But now coming in at number 4 is the Clone Wars TV show. Now, it's fair to say that the very recent addition of Season 7 of the Clone Wars is a major contributing factor as to why this is so high on my rankings. The Clone Wars delivered us world building and a peek behind the curtain of the Clone Wars like nothing else in the prequels. This show expanded on pre-existing characters and gives them way more depth than the films ever could. And introducing new characters that are all memorable, this show just done so much right. Now there are absolutely filler episodes, but the best episodes make up for it. The addition of Ahsoka Tano in this show was one of the highlights. She started annoying and then ended up being one of the best characters of the show. The idea of Anakin taking on an apprentice in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith was maybe a bit hard for people to believe, but it did work. It makes Anakin's struggles in Revenge of the Sith easier to understand, and it makes his turn to Darth Vader just a little bit more fleshed out. This show plays with Anakin's troubles, and it elevates Revenge of the Sith in the process. And of course, Season 7 of the Clone Wars just kicked it up a notch. The Siege of Mandalore arc, which tied directly into Revenge of the Sith's timeline, was perfect. Getting to see more of characters like Ahsoka, Maul, as well as the clones. The clones are honestly one of the standouts of this show. This show makes you realize that these clones aren't mindless. They have views on the Clone Wars. They're conflicted. They're different from one another. They're individuals. The Clone Wars TV show just encapsulates everything great about the Clone Wars era, and in the process elevates Revenge of the Sith to a new level, with an emotional ending to the show coming to the show's final episode with an appearance by Vader himself. But moving on to number 3, we have The Mandalorian. Now, I am making this video fresh off of the back of the Season 2 finale, and wow, this show has managed to unite Star Wars fans across the world. All Star Wars media has been somewhat divisive since Return of the Jedi, but for once, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have managed to unite the fandom, something I was starting to think was just impossible. The Mandalorian is the perfect mix of gunslinger western and Star Wars perfection. The entire premise of this show is built around our Mandalorian protagonist Din Djarin and his little mysterious green friend, and how they grow a bond and they get a really strong attachment to each other. And it works so much better than it has any right to. The first season was a solid, contained story with exciting revelations and tiebacks to old Star Wars media. But the second season went to insane new heights, tying in old characters with the new and developing even more excitement around our little green friend. Seeing characters like Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, all at the forefront of the show is something special. And the finale of Season 2 just proved that this show has no limits on where it's going to go or what it's going to do, adding Luke Skywalker to the endless cameos that the show provides. But the reason the cameos work, it's that these cameos share a purpose. They aren't mindless. They serve the plot of the show. Seeing Luke turn up in the season finale was perfect. Seeing him slay countless Dark Troopers with ease and then taking Grogu to begin his training, it was great. Grogu and Mando are just an iconic duo that Star Wars fans universally love. This show literally just cannot put a foot wrong at the moment. But the runner-up at number 2 is Empire Strikes Back, widely regarded as the best Star Wars film that has ever been made, and if you think that, I am not going to argue with you. Empire expands on the amazing setup done in A New Hope. Luke becomes a little bit less whiny and starts to transition into the Jedi that we know him as. We get introduced to Yoda, who drops iconic quote after iconic quote, and we just get more progression and development for our main characters that just always works. We get so many iconic Star Wars scenes from this film, whether it be Yoda lifting the X-Wing, the most iconic plot twist in cinema history, the Carbonite sequence. This film just has everything. Also, the fight choreography between Luke and Vader was miles better than the fight choreography in A New Hope. The introduction of Lando Calrissian was great to watch. Seeing Billy D. Williams play this smooth, sleazy sort of operator, I loved it. Lando is so good. I virtually just have nothing bad to say about Empire Strikes Back. It's the Star Wars film. It's the one everyone loves, and I'm not any different. But coming in at the number 1 spot as the best Star Wars film of all time, in my opinion, is Revenge of the Sith. Now, if I had have said this 10 years ago, people wouldn't be too happy with me, but these days more and more people are coming out and saying, yes, Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars film. Now, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that Revenge of the Sith is objectively better than Empire, because Revenge of the Sith is flawed big time. But the thing is, I just don't care. The film gets too much right for me to care. Revenge of the Sith is my Star Wars film. It's the film that got me into Star Wars, and it's the only Star Wars film that each and every time I watch it, I feel the pain of the characters. I get chills every single time Anakin and Obi-Wan begin their duel. It truly just never gets old to me, and it's so good seeing so many people saying that they love it too. Now that the prequel hate is starting to sort of fade away as younger fans become older and now have a voice too. For me, this film just nailed Anakin's downfall into becoming the most iconic villain in cinema. The relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan at the start of this film is so banter-based and fun, and it goes to show how strong their relationship is. They're like brothers. They fight like brothers, they joke like brothers, and they die for each other, which Anakin makes very clear to Palpatine when Palpatine says to leave Obi-Wan behind or they'll never make it. To which Anakin replies saying his fate will be the same as ours, showing that Anakin will allow himself and the most important person on Coruscant to die, instead of leaving Obi-Wan behind. Then of course you flash forward to the end of the film where these two are duking it out in one of the most emotional, over-the-top, important battles in Star Wars history. For me, the best lightsaber duel we have in Star Wars by a long way. The Order 66 sequence for me is still one of the best sequences in Star Wars. John Williams was just at the top of his game for Revenge of the Sith, whether it's the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin or the Order 66 sequence. The music is just as memorable as the film itself. Still, one of my favorite scenes of this film is where Anakin and Padme share a silent exchange. No dialogue is spoken, but the scene and the score says more than words ever could. I love Revenge of the Sith. It's flawed, I know. But again, I just don't care. The highs of this film are peak Star Wars for me. Revenge of the Sith is just my Star Wars film, and in my opinion, it's the best Star Wars film. But guys, those are my thoughts on the best Star Wars film and TV shows in one big ranking. This has been a long video, I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'll wrap this one up quick. Just remember, this was all just my opinion, and I want to hear yours, so let me know down in those comments, and if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. But that's going to do it for me today. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.